Hello and welcome once again to Rambling Reviews, straight in with the most awkward titled episode. I've not even been able to, I've already done the thumbnail for it, and I've not even been able to put the word car on the thumbnail without like completely screwing up my format for those. So yeah, the Canyon of the Golden Winged Snake's car. Thanks guys. Thanks guys at Infinity Train for forcing me to just to deal with that in terms of the thumbnail. It's cruel and unnecessary. Couldn't it have just been called the Golden Winged Snake's car? Why the Canyon of the Golden Winged Snake's car? Just like that is intentional. I can smell it. They just were like, let's have the longest title we've ever had. Anyway, before we get quite into breaking down that episode, there are a couple of quick things I want to cover related to the previous episode, I guess. So let's briefly talk about Tuba. First of all, that I mentioned in the last video, there's a frame from the trailer that like people couldn't identify on the Discord, and it looked like it was from an episode we hadn't seen yet, and it had Tuba in it. Apparently, since then, they've identified that it was a very quick shot from episode 4. A very quick reaction shot. It sort of looks new, and it's in the catch trailer, but it's like all you can see over the arm is like brickwork. It didn't look like it matched any location we'd been to so far, so a lot of people made that assumption, and then somebody went through, I guess, like shot by shot the cat's original episode in this series, episode 4, and was like, hey, look, it's from that. So there you go, debunked. Still stand by it though. Hashtag Tuba lives. I'm doing it. You can't see, but I'm doing the hashtag with my fingers and sort of crossing them in a hashtaggy way. I'm still pretty concerned Tuba is alive. Which on that subject, I just want to cover just because I thought it was really interesting. One of the comments on the last video from the Ponderer, who you can go check out, does videos of his own, really really good, really worth checking out. Lots of interesting thoughts. I'll put a link somewhere in the description. Posted that, they weren't really seriously considering the idea that Tuba was alive, but that they felt like the funeral episode kind of really slammed the door on that. I think the exact phrasing was, they're not going to walk it back after handling the funeral so maturely. Now that is a totally valid point, and it's actually something I kind of meant to address in the video and didn't really get to. It certainly ran through my mind. I think that is a really, really... this episode will definitely seal the deal for a lot of people on the theorying about Tuba returning and stuff. I think it does seem, on the surface at least to me, when you first look at it, you go, wow, they went to the whole trouble to do a whole funeral episode. Well, that character is almost definitely dead, because otherwise why would you sort of waste that time and handle it so well as well, and handle it so maturely? I do have a counter argument though that I wanted to talk about, and I actually wanted to talk about it in the video about that episode, episode 5, but just didn't get a chance. So to quickly clarify, well, I do 100% see that perspective, and that may very well turn out to be the case. Maybe I'm wrong and Tuba is gone, and that's what that episode was. But for me, I didn't really feel like the focus of the episode was saying goodbye to Tuba. Instead, it felt like we were sort of exploring how the characters handle grief, and using that to sort of raise those questions about like the denizens and how authentic they are, how real they are, because Simon says it in the episode, have your fake funeral for your fake person or whatever. I think showing how hurt Hazel is for Tuba and how mature she becomes, I think that, and then showing Grace responding to that and reacting to that that emotion with her own emotion, it's just it's a really interesting contrast. You got Simon, who is quote unquote a real person feeling nothing, and you've got Hazel, who's quote unquote fake, feeling everything, and then you've got Grace sort of learning to feel through the fake one. So for me, the focus of the episode was actually about, like, even though Tuba was the catalyst for all that, it was actually a higher percentage of the episode was more concerned with the bigger character ideas and the bigger themes like that, rather than memorializing Tuba. Not to say the episode didn't do some of that, Yeah. So I'm, for me, I don't know. I just feel like the memorializing Tuba element of the episode didn't not exist, but it was so overshadowed by their clear focus on the character work. So I think that episode served such a clear purpose. It's really the reason you even bother to fake kill a character, like because I think back to times when shows have done that. Like I always think back to The Walking Dead. I can't remember what season it was. There's a season that opened. Sorry, for Walking Dead fans for mild spoilers here. The season that opens with not opens, but in one of the first few episodes, the character Glenn looks like he gets surrounded by zombies, but it's one of those you don't see it happen. So why the hell would you think it happens thing? And then they don't really do a lot with the fact that everyone thinks he's dead, and then he comes back, and it's like. Okay, I don't know. It was just they didn't really do anything with it, so it's kind of that's when it feels cheap. Is like, why did you do that? You did that to cheaply trick the audience. That was your goal. Your goal was to make the audience go, oh, no, not to actually explore the character stuff. Whereas with this, because they used it so effectively to explore the character stuff, like that in itself is a good enough reason to go to the trouble of doing a fake out death. So yeah, there you go. I've kind of covered it. I'm not gonna. I could literally talk about that stuff all day, and I've already these episodes are getting weirdly longer and longer, and already 6 minutes in. I don't want to continue that. So so that's that stuff out of the way. Let's talk about this episode. So this is the Canyon of the Golden Winged Snakes car. Surprisingly few golden winged snakes featuring in the episode itself, but there you go. Maybe that's why they focused on calling it the Canyon of. Maybe, who knows? So yeah, it did not escape my notice last week that I wouldn't waste too much time speculating because a lot would be covered in this next episode, only then to speculate for several minutes on stuff that was indeed tackled early in this episode, although not as much detail as I thought. But yeah, it seems Amelia did indeed scan the car. I should do a quick recap very quickly for those who don't remember. This episode is where they have a chat with Amelia. It becomes clear that she knows a lot, but Grace is kind of scared that she's going to sort of blow, tell Simon the thing Simon's currently in denial about, which is that Grace's number is going down not because it's broken, but because she's improving as a human being. She doesn't want to find that out, so she makes this whole speech about she makes this whole argument of we can't trust adults, and she's probably the one causing it. She seems to know the most about numbers, and then they run away. Simon's not happy about that. He wants to see her number. She doesn't want to show him, so she yells at him. So does Hazel a bit, and Simon, in a huff, goes off to see the cat for a solution. We have a very interesting conversation between those two that culminates. We'll break it down more detail later, but culminates with the cat giving Simon a way to extract Grace's tape so he can find out what's really going on. Then cue end of episode. So as an episode on the whole, I think it's actually a lot more set up than I thought it was going to be. I really thought we were going to be dealing with stuff this week. I think in my predictions talked about how now Amelia's there, they're going to have to shatter some Apex expectations and viewpoints. They found some really clever ways to just not do that yet, to hold that off and reposition the pieces. And I'm not saying it's not a good episode. It's valuable, but it's valuable in the sense of they've repositioned a few things so that the next episode, I guess, can be the payoff. We'll come back to that. Obviously I haven't seen the next episode yet, so I don't know, but we'll talk about it as we go. So let's break it down bit by bit. So it's what we've learned is that Amelia was indeed scanning cars. She scanned that car, found nothing, and then came back a few minutes later after they entered because, presumably, Hazel is some sort of aberration, some sort of code error. She might have even used the word glitch, which is, maybe that's the word I'll use going forward, because aberration sounds horrible. We'll call Hazel a glitch going forward. How about that? So yeah, the quote is lines of code that don't match the reality of the car. So the impression we get is that basically she created a code to scan the cars. She created a pulse, I think she described it as, to scan the cars. She does seem to be working with 1-1. It's almost like 1-1's put her to work fixing her mistakes. So she's got this code that scans the cars, and when it finds aberrations, such as the unfinished car, it ejects them. So that was the code working normally. But she started noticing that random cars are just getting ejected left, right, and centre. Now, we know that the reason that probably is because a line of code, an aberration, in this example, Hazel, is moving through perfectly healthy cars. So the code is picking up Hazel and going, that car's screwed, and ejecting it. But Amelia's not seeing that. She doesn't know that Hazel exists, so she's just seeing lots of seemingly healthy cars being ejected, so she's investigating that. Which is really interesting, really cool, makes perfect sense, really does explain everything. It does cover as well, as I've been saying since like the minute we saw the trailer, it was not 1-1 after the Apex. 1-1 didn't care. 1-1 doesn't know or care what the Apex are up to. I said that at the time. I stood by it, and here we are with that being very much the case. The only interest they have is in the anomalies, it seems. The glitches, or whatever you want to call them. The lines of code that don't match the reality of the car. So we've got this situation then, so that Amelia now has walked through a car, seen it's fine, and then immediately, after seeing 3 beings enter it, that car is now corrupt. So, or has lines of code that don't match. She doesn't know exactly what. Her scanner is obviously quite primitive and isn't giving her too much detail about exactly what. So she's not yet figured out that it's a person, that it's a denizen of presumably of one of her unfinished cars that's moving through, being that out of place line of code. So she thinks these kids are doing something to mess with the cars to give them that that code. The real tragedy behind all of this, by the way, is that every car these guys have visited has been ejected. I also like that phrase, ejected, because it conjures an image for me of the train car getting to the sort of rising to the top of the cars, scooting along them, and then eventually getting to the end of the train, which it shouldn't theoretically have if it's an infinity train, but hey-ho, the finite train, and just launching off the end. Just launching off, and just exploding in some sort of like, I don't know, I'm like thinking of it like an 80s action movie explosion. So there's a lot of cool ideas in this. It makes a lot of sense to me that that's what's going on. I watched the episode a couple times, or at least the opening scene a couple of times, more than the rest of the episode, because I kept going back to it just to make sure I got the exact nature of what Amelia is doing, like pat, because it's all sort of hinted in the dialogue, and some of it's outright said, but it's all said in like just quick lines here and there. So it's making sure I got my understanding of exactly what she was doing right, and we made sure I rewatched that opening scene where she's talking a little, as many times as I could before I did this. But that's my understanding of what's been going on. And again, it does mean that like the fancy dancing car, neon jungle car, the color clock car, they're gone with all the denizens in tow, which is a real shame because there's been some really fun characters. I wouldn't have minded seeing Roy. Like Roy, I'm your boy in a later episode. He is irritating, but like he's a lot of fun. Or like the characters from Debutante Ball Car, Fancy Dancing Car. Would have loved to see that. That would have been fun to see them again. For maybe another passenger. So the idea that any car we visited this season is long gone. That is sad. But yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. So yeah, I love like how naive the show makes Simon seem. Really early in this episode, he's ranting about the false conductor trying to kill them, and Amelia doesn't even like bother correcting him. It's just so wrong, it's comical to her, which is like super clever. It's one of the ways in which they stop her from just shattering their world this early in the show. They wanted Amelia to enter here to create that conflict, but like they didn't want her to completely drop the bomb yet, which I guess is coming. They're not done with Amelia, obviously. She's still got a lot of information to impart on them. So maybe in the last 2, maybe she doesn't come back now to the last 2. Then again, I said we probably wouldn't see the cat until the last 2, and then she was back. So screw it. Actually, let me change. She's back next week. She's back next episode. Just because last time I said a character wasn't coming until the last 2 episodes. They were in the very next episode. Oh, man. Yeah, so... either way, Amelia will be back for sure, and she's got to drop that information on them because they really the final blow. And the reason that I predicted from the trailer that Hazel would turn out to be a denizen and Amelia would be in this series is because I knew the best way to absolutely implode everything the Apex believe is to have them befriend someone who they think is a human and then them turn out to be a denizen. I'd have Amelia tell them that they're absolutely entirely wrong about the false conductor theory they've got going. Basically, the Apex are really shit fan theorists for this show. That's what it is. Never thought about that before. That's quite meta. During the first season, I bet there were a lot of people making theories about the conductor and stuff, I guess, in a weird way. Simon and Grace represent those. Anyway, so yeah, it's so comically done the way Amelia dismisses him, and it's so clever. You know, one has no idea you exist, short pants. It's such a brutal line. Amelia's the best. I love Amelia so much. She's a great character. I also love her reading the card that she was clearly given by 1-1. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. She's just like desperately doesn't want to read it, but she's making her. She knows she has to. And then they do the thing where it's signed 1, but the other 1 isn't until the other side of the card. So she has to deliver it in the way he does with that pause. That is chef's kiss. I love that moment so much. All aboard the growth train. Wee! It's so good. Because it's exactly the sort of shit 1-1 says, but coming out of the mouth of this poor middle-aged woman who just does not want any part in it. It's great. It's brilliant. Really good. We've talked about the cars being ejected, which was next to my notes, but apparently I got to that early. It's worth noting actually as well, and I wrote this down and I didn't say it, but so all those denizens we've met this series are probably gone because those cars have been ejected. If we're living in a world where, so again, we've talked about Tuba coming back and the two possibilities being one, Tuba sort of like, climbed under the car or whatever instead of getting clobbered by the wheel. There are ways out of it or whatever. Or the other option being that Tuba was digital and therefore memories will have been stored somewhere. Potentially, the train is a very digital thing. It's very modern. Like they could just recreate Tuba's body with those orbs and then put the memories back in. Tuba exists again. There's two ways you can do it. So one is the other. But so I guess they could recreate those cars. I guess. I made a note of that and then forgot to say it when I talked about that. So yeah, maybe we will see some of those cars again, even if they're for all intents and purposes at the moment gone. Sorry if I sound like I'm moving away from the mic. I'm just checking that I actually have enough time for this recording. I do. So I love the moment when Simon says that we have the highest number of anyone on the train except you. Really, it's just like rude. I also love the look on Grace's face when she says that. She may later in the episode we get it's implied that she's not looked herself yet, but you can tell on her face she knows it's going down and it's low, and that potentially during Tuba's funeral it could have gone right down. And I love that at the end of the episode they've been doing this thing where on the Cartoon Network logo you see the hands of the characters that are in the episode, the leads. So Tuba was there, Tuba's, and then it was just their 3 hands. This episode it was all 4, included Amelia's. But Grace's glove has been left on the last couple. She ain't looking, but I love the expression on her face because she absolutely knows it's been going down. In her heart, she has to know. You can just see it in her eyes, and it's really well animated. And I did write really shit, I wrote an intentionally shit, I think I already made it, joke, Infinity Train, more like Finite Train, cars numbered 600,000, maybe there's only 1 million cars, maybe, because if it's Infinity Train, if it's literally infinite, then the odds of it being such a low number are slim, right? Mathematically speaking. There are a lot more numbers above 600,000 than there are below it in infinity. So, I was kind of looking at that 600,000, huh? I guess the train does have an edge, a limit. So there you go. I know some of the people listening to this are quite mathy, so particularly Cram, so if you want to correct me on that, Cram, but statistically speaking, if it was Infinity Train, I think what are the odds that the car number would be so low? Seems unlikely, right? Possible, I suppose. People win the lottery and stuff, but yeah, I think that number suggests there are absolutely thousands and maybe millions of cars, but it definitely suggests there is, Then again, the show is called Infinity Train. They don't walk around on the train calling it the Infinity Train, I suppose, do they? But yeah, there you go. I just thought that was fun and interesting. I guess realistically that had to be a limit to it, but there you go. Not really a big gripe, but before anyone starts pulling me up on that, I'm just sort of messing about. It's like, it's a little thing. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, Amelia mentions that, she wanted to know if any of the ejected cars that they'd been in had any obvious signs of her experiments, like, for example, turtles. Hazel's reaction is great. And you get the impression, I talked about how, like, maybe there was a memory we weren't seeing from Amelia, where they'd had a pet turtle or something and they were going to do that this season. I don't think that's the case anymore. I've changed my mind on that because she seems confused about the number of turtles in her cars. Like, she's like, so many turtles. Like, why in the world would there be so many turtles? She makes that comment in this. Hazel's reaction to that is obviously fantastic, knowing she's part turtle. She's a turt. So yeah, that's a really fun moment, and it's kind of changed my mind on that Amelia theory. I don't think there is some sort of deep-seated memory regarding turtles. I think it's some weird, subtle thing that's in her psyche that's ended up translating to all her cars, regardless of whether she wanted them to. Basically, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I do love here that we get Grace being the sort of master manipulator, because she doesn't really want to talk to Amelia because deep down she knows perfectly well there's nothing wrong with her number. It's going down because she's getting better as a person. But Simon is kind of in denial about that, and he's still asserting something is wrong. I think he's a smart dude. There's no way he actually thinks that, I think. But, that's how denial works, So yeah, she knows that by talking to Amelia, they're just going to discover that and confirm that if they ask about it. So she has to come up with some really good logic for them not sticking with Amelia. So, but Grace's quick thinking is really impressive here, and her lying is really impressive here. She's still a master manipulator. She's working with 1-1. She could be the one causing it. And then code A17 of the Apex, never trust adult passengers, which is fantastic. What good quick thinking. Multiple reasons that all seem very logical on the surface. Let's get away from her. Not because I actually think she's dangerous, but because, let's be honest, she's about to she's gonna give the game away for me. I do love how much Amelia hates children when they run away after that. She's like, I hate children. I think that's fun. She does mention this car is marked for ejection, which is really interesting because what we've seen in the other cars is there's been a scan and then it's immediately ejected. So why this isn't immediately ejecting, I don't know. Maybe because she's still in it. She's got it marked for ejection, and the minute she steps off, it goes. But that makes sense to me. But for those guys, for our three leads, they run off and then go hide out in a cave, and they're gonna camp out there. Did they not hear her say it was marked for ejection? Because I would think getting out of there would be the priority before it ejects. No? They don't know it's not going to go until she gets off, which is what I assume is happening. Weird. Unless the idea is they didn't hear her yell that, but I'm pretty sure she yells that when they're really close by and that they should have heard it, but hey, maybe not. Weird. So yeah, they end up getting away because of that, because of Grace's ability to debate it and sort of her fear that she's going to almost get found out by it. They do kind of escape before Amelia shatters their world, which again, on the writer's part, very clever. Hold that off until a little bit later in the story. On board with that. I like Simon grabbing Grace's arm and her kind of finally snapping at him and saying, no, this is my problem. She feels like he's making it about him, or she at least says that, but that again could just be an excuse for her to not have to reveal it. Hazel obviously shoves him. She's still upset, but I think deep down, obviously, Simon still knows Grace is changing, and that's why number goes down. I've already said this, but he'd have to be an idiot not to know. And I think here he's just looking for proof. I think he wants to look into it and discover it is broken. He's desperately looking for. I think he's looking for evidence to back up his own desperate hope that she's not changing. But all he's seeing is evidence that she's changing. Even her behaviour towards him is changing. And that's what is the catalyst for him to head off to the cat. Before we get to that, though, very quickly, I just want to talk about Hazel losing her mind. She gets really angry. She says, I'm mad, I grabbed your arm, he's being mean to you like Tuba. And then she starts going turtley, and Grace is like, shh, Simon's like just outside. And she's like, I'll use it to fight him, I can protect us with it. I'll be Tuba now. I'm Tuba, which is just like the most heartbreaking thing in this episode for me. It's the void of Tuba still very much making Hazel feel so many very complicated feelings, and that's again very deeply affecting Grace. Well, once again, we're just reasserting how human this not human is, you know. And I think Grace witnessing repeatedly how emotional Hazel is exactly the reason you go to the trouble, other than the dramatic tension for the audience. But from a story perspective, it's exactly why you want to do what the show did to Tuba. It's genius. It really is. I thought about this a lot when we were talking about the trailer, and I thought about all the different ways you can pull the rug out from under the Apex's belief system, and befriending a denizen was as far as my brain went. Credit to the geniuses that write this show to have gone one step further and gone, no, a grieving denizen. Let's really show these guys feel. Because the crux of the Apex's argument last season was they don't feel anything. They're not real. Well, try spending some time with Hazel grieving and feel and say they don't feel anything. Like, challenge, you know, take that. Like, it's very, very clever, very good. I did not, obviously, as we've talked about, see Simon going back to the Apex, to the cat coming at all. That really threw me. Makes sense. He does have the shoes and the harpoon, which is I've talked about in the past, is how they traditionally get around to the different cars quickly. Seeing the shoes working outside the car, which we've already done, obviously, when Tuba did, obviously when Tuba died, when Tuba fell, during that scene, obviously my earlier theory about those shoes only working inside the cars was disproven. I didn't talk about it at the time, because there was much more pressing matters, but obviously we see them in action again here outside of the car, so I thought I'd bring it up. It's still a bit weird that initially, before they met Hazel and Tuba, like when they got to the jungle car, that you couldn't just give the shoes to Grace and they could just go over the cars. Hey ho, what do I know? Like, yeah, maybe that wouldn't work. Seemed like a good option though to me. But anyway, so yeah, I love this sort of determination on Simon. I love all the shots surrounding that, the action shots of Simon just sort of badass harpoon, electric shoe, sort of like over the cars, like Spider-Manning his way over to the cat. But with that like grim, like gritty determination. So there's a few different things that come up in this conversation with the cat. It's an episode of two halves, really. There's the Amelia half and then there's the cat half. And this obviously marks the switch to the cat half. So the first thing we tackle is her abandoning Simon. And while we don't get like the exact nitty gritty details, I think we got enough of what happened here that this is probably the last time we're going to deal with this. I know some people still want to know the exact problem or the exact situation, because there is a question towards like how were their gomes in the car, like in the train. Like, I mean, it's happened before when Tulip went out into the wasteland. They chased her into that first car, but it does seem unlikely. Was there a gome car on the train? Were they experimenting? Were they doing something they shouldn't be doing? It's hard to tell, but I don't think it's important. I think what's important is what physically happened from the characters' perspectives, and we, you know, from the emotional perspective. And while I said with the cat there was more for us to figure out, because she sort of hinted that's not quite what happened in terms of that she abandoned him, this is not what actually happened, which is, I feel like from a character perspective, is all we're ever going to get. We're never going to get the nitty gritty, like the actual circumstances of it, because it's kind of irrelevant. Like, what's relevant to the story now is how both characters see those events. So Simon sees it as she abandoned him, and the difference, and that's not quite how it happened of it all, is that from the cat's perspective, she didn't abandon him. She was escaping, running for her life from the Gomes, and thought he was with her until she was in the next car. And then, so she was escaping, And then that's when she kind of was forced to abandon him. And that's why it's a bit more complicated than just she abandoned him. Because at that point, she realized he wasn't with her, but she did not go back. And I think that's really interesting because a couple of reasons. First of all, it's very in the spirit of the cat. I've talked about this multiple times on this podcast. The cat is self-preservation above everything else. She does stuff, but only when it benefits her. She is essentially a selfish character, and sort of self-interest is her leading character trait, and it sometimes goes against her better judgment, but she has done the right thing in the past. She did help Tulip get to like the engine in series 1 with letting her pull apart her transport to do that, and like going with her. But then she abandoned her before she had to go face Amelia. She was like, "Yeah, this is where I get off. I'm not gonna fight the conductor." Self-interest again always kicks in with her, and this is where I think she's almost self-loathing the cat, because I feel like that's her nature. That selfish inclination is part of her nature. But she knows that selfish inclination is what hurts Simon. So she is kind of torn. Like, I think she does feel bad about what happened, which makes her more complex and more interesting than I thought. And I do think what's interesting about this is all the other denizens are determined to help passengers. They're programmed to help passengers, right? We kind of know this now. What's so different about the cat? Why is the cat so able to ignore that programming? Why the cat's different to other denizens? I'm just going to lay that there and leave it, because I don't have an actual precise theory. There's too many possibilities, but I think at some point we're going to discover the cat is not quite a traditional denizen one way or another. Maybe she used to be a passenger. Maybe she's a denizen that figured out how to shift her programming around. Maybe she's a mistake. I don't know. Maybe she was a specific creation for a very specific thing that has since become defunct, and she just sort of runs around the train now, the only sort of self-aware denizen. I don't know. But it's very, very unusual. She is the only denizen that behaves this way. The only one. But yeah, so I don't think we're going to get any more of it, because I think we've gotten the character side of it, which is that she never set out to abandon Simon, but her fear kicked in and stopped her from being able to go back to him. So she sees it differently to him. She still regrets it, feels awful about it, but she has a different perspective on it. So yeah, there you go. And we can ask several questions, I'm sure, of the creators of the show as to why there was a Gome in a train car in the first place, but I suspect you'll never get the answers. Now the cat knows, obviously, that Grace's number going down means the obvious. You say it's broken, but the truth is you just don't like how it's working. So she's really trying to get Simon to just fucking see the reality here. But she does have a very strong reaction to the name Amelia. Understandable. She did try to kill her. I don't think there's more to it than that now. I'm starting to think maybe those two don't have quite the history I thought, other than a few times they ran into each other, and Amelia made the cat sort of do her bidding. But again, self-preservation kicked in, so she had to do it to keep herself alive. So I think, we do get... Someone did say this on, I think, the Discord, but it was exactly my thought when I was watching the episode too, so I'm sorry for stealing essentially your thought, but I would argue we both independently had it, and then I read that you'd written it, and I was like, yeah, I 100% agree. The line, "Well, I never lie when I'm telling the truth," might be the entire cat's ethos summed up in a single line. I never lie when I'm telling the truth. Yeah. What about the rest of the time, Cat? We're on to you. We know you master manipulator, you. So yeah, Simon shows signs of really wanting to control things, because he's sort of saying that Grace isn't acting like she should. This comes back to what I was talking about in the previous thing, like this idea that Simon is like that he's in denial that Grace is changing. He didn't want things to change, and he's not happy that they are. And this is why he's behaving the way he is. I think that's really powerful. I think it works really well. So yeah, I like that. I think that's good storytelling. But it's really reinforced here with that line. He just wants to control it and make it like so it stays as it was. We learn the cat's name finally. I always assumed she didn't have one and that it was just the cat, but it turns out it's Samantha, which blew my mind. Samantha. Very human sounding name. Took that little piece of information away as well, because I do think there's something. This episode kind of confirms there's something more to the cat than meets the eye. Maybe she isn't quite a denizen as we think she is, but yeah, her name was Samantha before she went by the cat, or maybe just anyone who gets really close to her, she tells her their real name. Yeah, didn't expect that to come up this episode, but there you go, it did. I also didn't expect the tape thing to happen. He wants help. She knows he wants something to help understand what's happening with Grace. The cat knows that what's happening with Grace is that she's getting better, but Grace is almost hurting herself by hiding it from Simon, because that's what's... Actually, that's a really interesting thought. I just realised. Yeah, so Grace is actually kind of hurting Simon more by hiding it from him, because the reason Simon is able to be in this partial denial is because she's still trying to put on a front of everything's okay for Simon, which is allowing him to cling to that delusion that it's a broken number, not a changing friend. So Grace is really enabling this delusion. And the cat, on the other hand, who's trying to talk him out of that and being like frank with him and saying, look, she's changing. He's not getting it. So she does the next thing she knows that's good at. And this is typical cat. She gives him exactly what he thinks he wants, but it's actually what he needs. Like, it's more complicated than even he realizes, because she's essentially giving him a device that she knows will prove what she's saying, which is that Grace is just getting better. She's changing. For those who don't remember, again, anyone who's watching this in the future, I'm sure you do though, Simon is given in this episode a device that will be able to extract tape from Grace. So he'll be able to see her memories and thoughts. What will he see? I don't know. I've had several thoughts about this. He could see her past, like her reason for being on the train, or it could be more recent stuff, like proof that Hazel's a denizen, or evidence that Grace has been lying to him, or maybe even a glimpse of the Tuba funeral and seeing Grace crying over Tuba. There's a few things it may end up showing him, maybe all of the above. I don't know. I would like to think it's going to be what got Grace on the train, because I want to see that, but then the reality of it is that doesn't teach Simon anything about the current circumstances. So I feel like we're probably going to get more recent stuff, even though I want to know why Grace got on the train. But I want to dovetail that into my own theory, because they make a real point here of don't go into your own tape. Going into your own tape is dangerous. So someone's going into their own tape, and I suspect, looking at it, it's going to be Grace. Because if what Simon needs to see is more recent stuff, but the tape then exists, if Grace takes a look at it, she's going to be back in her own memory. So I think we may end up getting there's a chance we're going to get both here. I don't see, because Simon has the device, I don't see Grace using it on him. I see the other way around. I see like him using it on her. Oh man, maybe he'll try to use it on Hazel. I didn't even think about that. That's an exciting prospect. Does that even work on a null? What would he see? I mean, he is more interested in Grace though, and why she's changing and her number. So actually, no, he probably will just use it on Grace. It'd be exciting if he tried to use it on Hazel. I don't know what would happen then, but he's definitely. I think he's going to use it on Grace, and I think he's going to see more recent stuff that's going to break his brain a little bit and like finally make it hit home for him that Grace is changing. Then we're going to get maybe because the tape exists at that point. Maybe we're going to get Grace looking at her own tape and learn a bit more about her past. Maybe knowing it's dangerous, Simon will be angry with her. Oh yeah, that's a good. Yeah, all right. Let's do this theory. So Simon sees the tape. He's pissed that Grace is lying to him. He's upset, and for a minute you think he's upset because he's like realizing the error of his ways, but actually he's furious because she's been lying to him this whole time, and that she's getting better and changing her viewpoint on denizens. So he shows her own tape as like a revenge tactic. Boom. There you go. I'm just trying to think of a way to get both, because I know realistically there's no way that Simon needs to see how she got on the train and why. Potentially pointless speculation, because it might very well be in the next episode. I have genuinely no idea. At this point, there are only 3 left, so I guess it has to happen in the next one, or at least part of it. So yeah, what a great episode. I do think I was surprised how much of this was set up, but I'm glad, because it feels like because this episode doesn't really, if you actually look at it, have a story of its own. They talk to Amelia, there's some information exchanged. I guess it kind of does. Like, it has Simon gets more weirdness from Grace, and then goes to try and get I guess the plot of the episode is Simon's quest to get a thing to prove that Grace's number is broken, because he's in denial, I guess. But either way, I mean, it's not even a criticism, really. It's just an observation that this episode spends a lot of time sort of moving pieces around. It's like it's setting up for its checkmate, but it's not quite ready to do it yet, so there's a few pieces that it had to move a little bit further. We had to get Grace to a certain place, we had to get Hazel to a certain place, we had to get Simon to a certain place, both mentally and sort of physically. So yeah, I think the next episode is going to be a really interesting one, because I think we've set up for that now. 3 episodes left. I think traditionally episode 8 that's usually the mindfuck episode, or is it episode 7? I can't remember. I think it might be 8, which in this case is the next one I'm going to be watching in a few seconds of finishing recording this. So I'm gonna go now. Once again, this has gone on too long. I shouldn't be talking to myself for 40 minutes at a time on a TV show. It's only 10 minutes long. Doesn't make any sense. But I think, yeah, the really important episode in terms of the structure of the series. As an individual episode, probably one of the weaker of the series. I think that's fair to say. Doesn't have a lot going on other than just sort of building on some of those themes that we've been experiencing the last season, the whole season, and just sort of repositioning some of the characters for presumably what comes next. Totally necessary to a season like this, but in isolation, this is not a great piece of television. When you look at the previous episodes, in isolation, incredible. The episode before that, in isolation, incredible. They all stand on their own 2 feet. This one just kind of feels like it's the connective tissue that's going to take us from point A to point B. And I'm okay with that, and it's necessary, but it does end up meaning this is probably one of the weaker episodes of the series. But just because it's standing up against these incredible episodes that do so much. Not because it's individually bad. It just is, great jokes, some good character stuff. We're really getting a handle on Simon's weird denial now, and we've set up ourselves for a potentially really good run now to the finale. So very excited. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching and listening to these, whoever you are. So a lot of people, I've seen some comments, people doing it while listening to these while they do the dishes. It's funny because I often edit these alongside doing the dishes. So if there's a bit where I'm looking for a certain sound clip, where I'm trying to, on 1 or 2 of these videos this year, I've tried to put a visual over a certain part of me speaking and I can't find it, so I'll just put it on in the background while I do the dishes until I find that clip, and then I'll dry my hands and edit for a bit. Really weird. So I'm with you, literally doing that sometimes. But yeah, I also listen to I also watch videos like this and listen to podcasts while I do the dishes. So I think that's really nice. Sometimes I do it while I'm doing the hoovering as well. It's a little hoovering activity. Podcasts. It's perfect for that because I've got some wireless headphones. Some Bluetooth headphones, perfect. Anyway, yeah, no, I do really genuinely appreciate anybody who's been listening to this so far. Feel free to share if you're involved in any of the sort of Infinity Train community. You want people looking for this sort of content, let them know it exists. Stick around, there's more stuff coming on the channel once we get through this. But otherwise, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time, probably tomorrow, when we discuss the Hey Ho Woe Car, which might be the most ridiculous title so far, but I'm very excited because silly title probably means the darkest episode yet. So thank you. Looking forward to that. Anyway, take care, guys. Goodbye.